What's up, guys? It's Collin from Built2Wander. Behind me is a 1975 International Harvester Scout 2, the latest addition to our fleet, built by 3D Off-Road. Today we're going to talk about how this vehicle came to us, the current condition that it's in, and what our big plans entail for a full-on Resto-Mod of this project. Before we do that, like this video, subscribe to the Driving Line channel, and let's get after it. So my wife Jess and I had always talked about owning a vintage 4x4 one day, and I always have had this love for the International Harvester Scout. Just a nostalgic, classic 4x4, so much so that we named our Golden Retriever puppy after this vehicle. And fast forward, beginning of this year, 2023, we find out that one of Jess's friends is selling their old Scout 2. So the opportunity just kind of fell in our laps and felt like this might be the right time to finally get that vintage 4x4 that we've always talked about. But before purchasing it, I hit up my buddy Matt Thompson down at 3D Off-Road, and I asked him to come take a look at it to really know what we were up against and determine if this was something that we could collaborate on and create something really rad out of. And so I'd love for you guys to meet Matt and have him walk around the Scout 2 today, talk about the condition that it came to us in, some of the improvements we've made to get it relatively roadworthy, and then ultimately the big plans we have to do a full Resto-Mod on this beast.
What's up, guys? Matt Thompson from 3D Off-Road. You know, Collin and I have built a lot of vehicles together, and he's always talked about building a Scout or a vintage 4x4, and you know, I never really thought we were going to get to build one. So one day Collin calls me. I was super pumped that he said he found a Scout that was possibly a buyer. He wanted me to come take a look at it and see what we were up against. And so I really want to show you guys what I saw and what the future brings for this thing. First impressions, you know, when we walked up to it at Collin's friend's house, I walked into the garage door and I see that this Scout has been primered. And so that was exciting for me because I knew that this thing had been worked on. Maybe some of the panels had been replaced already. I was really excited to see that it had a hard top. These are really hard to find. It seemed complete. It just hadn't been touched yet. So I really wanted to get underneath it, wanted to check the rocker panels. I really wanted to see what extent somebody has gone into. And so one of the things that I noticed was that this wheel tub had been reworked. It had been opened up a little bit, you know, they had refolded over the sheet metal. Great to make room for the bigger tires, but I knew that this wasn't right and proper. So I crawled underneath. I wanted to see if all of this was nice and tight. You know, there's no Bondo in here at all. These rocker panels are solid in here. Doesn't feel like or seem like there's a lot of Bondo. There's some light cancerous spots in here. So that tells me that there wasn't a lot of Bondo in this thing to begin with. So it got me really excited about this build that, you know, although we're gonna have to do some sheet metal work, it's not gonna be the rust and the battle of that. One of the other things I did is I opened up the doors. The floor pans in these are super terrible about rusting out. The carpet underneath, the moisture sits underneath there and rots them out. Well, somebody has replaced these floorboards and they just did it with some patch panels, not the original pieces. So I know right away we're gonna have to redo this floor, get it more structurally sound and get it back to how it's supposed to be. It was great to see somebody try to reupholster the original seat in here. The old school bench seats where people could sit together, you know, slide together and sit in the middle. Great things, just brings back a lot of old school memories that you see on TV or whatever. The other thing I noticed was the cage in this had been reworked with maybe some old gas pipe, something. So we know we're gonna have to rework that guy and get this thing back to the way it's supposed to look. So one of the things that I noticed, you know, there was a lot of wires hanging down. So I wanted to see what we were up against on there. So I just crawled around, I looked, there's a lot of stuff hanging down here, old school glass fuses, you know, turn signal switch wiring, you know, ignition wiring. So we knew we were gonna have to replace all that stuff or, you know, clean it up and get it back up to where it needed to be. Collin had actually done a great job on finding some original door panels, the handles for this thing, so that it really cleans this up already. And, you know, that way they can get out and drive it around. But before we could do that, we knew that there were some things we were gonna have to do to get this thing running well and make it to where we can move this thing in and out of the shop, drive it around town until we were ready to tear this thing down. So let me show you some of the things that we did, and we'll go from there. So let's fast forward. I got with Collin and I talked about, is this thing worth buying? Yes, it was. There's a lot of great parts. So him and Jess decided to go ahead and purchase the vehicle. We noticed that there were some things we had to change. They really wanted to be able to drive it in and out of the garage, maybe take it out to dinner. So one of the first things we did was we replaced the belts. The belts were pretty rotted out. We wanted to make sure that this thing would charge and steer on its own. The hoses were in pretty decent shape. It would not run well. So, we checked out all the ignition system. The points had looked like they'd been replaced once. So we did spark plugs, we did wires, and we had to adjust the timing. The timing was way off. The other things we had to do to this was replace the starter. It wouldn't turn over, it was cranking over really, really slow. And so we noticed that the starter was actually coming apart. So we went down, we picked up a new starter for this, put it in, and we were able to get this thing fired up pretty easily. And then we noticed, it was running pretty rich, it was backfiring real bad. So we went into the carburetor, made some changes. So we got this thing running well enough now that he can actually drive it down to the shop and we can start tearing this thing apart.
Thanks, Matt, for walking us around the Scout. As you guys can tell, we decided to go ahead and pull the trigger on this thing, and super grateful for Matt's help. He spent a lot of days up in the garage with me at the house, teaching me all kinds of things about this old carbureted V8 and getting it running again. So it's been fun to kind of drive around town, and now I can actually drive it down to the shop and tear into it for the build. So with that being said, our plan is not to make this thing an off-road rock crawler like you're used to seeing from Built2Wander in 3D Off-Road. The goal is to create a really nostalgic road warrior, something that's extremely clean we can take to car shows. We're gonna do a full-on resto mod, restore this thing back to its former glory with some modern drivability. So Matt, tell me what that means to you.
Yeah, so we're gonna do a frame off, obviously. We're gonna do a modern fuel injection V8, whether that be a Hemi, an LS, we're still trying to get out those final details. We're gonna do a pretty radical wild suspension, I believe. We're gonna get with Bill Stein and do some coilovers. And I really want to make this thing super drivability, keep the LCG down, and just make this thing a super cool driver.
Yeah, so he talked about low center of gravity. So the plan is to throw maybe a 35, 37-inch Nitto tire Recon grappler under this build. That'll be a great tire for driving down the road. We might get it on some light trails, and the Recon grappler will handle that just fine. Absolutely. But the goal is to massage the body to where it doesn't look like we've cut it up to create space for a bigger tire.
Or butchered this thing up.
Right.
I mean, we want to make this thing look super clean and keep that classic look.
Absolutely. So try to keep those factory body lines intact, and but by going bigger with the tire, we'll make it stand out from the rest of them out there.
Absolutely. And the other question is, do we keep stock axles? Do we go with different axles? So we have a few more decisions to make before we tear this thing down, but I'm pretty sure the next video you guys see will be some pretty radical stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So on that note, kind of the next phase for this thing is to get it down to the shop, start tearing it apart and taking measurements, begin planning out the build of the chassis itself. And then once the chassis is done, we'll start working on the body.
Yeah.
So I plan to document this build in phases. I hope you guys are as excited about it as we are, and I can't wait to continue to show you the progress that we make. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Drop us a comment below. Let Matt and I know what you think about the new Scout. If you got any cool ideas as far as the actual restoration goes, let me know. I'm always open to learn more about this thing. And as always, hit the like button if you did and subscribe if you haven't. Until next time, wander on.
Thanks for watching Driving Line. If you guys like this video, consider subscribing to our channel so you'll never miss any of the content we create here. Whether you're into trucks, Jeeps, imports, domestic vehicles, or anything in between, we are here to fuel your passion. So hit that subscribe button and we'll see you guys next time.